As the dust settles after the opening legs of the F1 season on the Arabian peninsula, a few familiar trends have appeared. Max Verstappen is still racing in a different class to the rest of the field. Fernando Alonso is still way better than Lance Stroll. And Mercedes are still making the same mistakes they've been making for the last 2 seasons. With a brand spanking new car ready to challenge for podiums and potentially even race wins, fans of the team were excited to see what they've been cooking up in the off-season. When Hamilton announced he would be leaving at the end of 2024, it seemed written in the stars that a final competitive season at the team that had helped him achieve so much success would happen. Yet here we are, 2 races in, and by all accounts, Mercedes' chances at podium finishes are as good as nothing. What is perhaps the most surprising part of all of this for many fans is how they seem to have no idea how to solve their problems either. The zero-pod design was based on good ideas, but Mercedes just couldn't get it working, so they jumped ship and followed Red Bull's lead. Despite the complete overhaul of the car, the same problems persist, indicating a much deeper lack of understanding of how the current regulations work. Their start to the season has been so bad, in fact, that George Russell says that his team are actually getting slower during the 3 days of each race weekend, unlike their rivals who are managing to find improvements and get quicker. That is what the free practice sessions are for each weekend after all. Russell was second quickest in FP2 but qualified for the race in P7. He finished Saturday's Saudi Arabian Grand Prix in 6th, while his teammate Lewis Hamilton finished down a place on his grid position after being forced into a different pit stop strategy to avoid double stacking and losing positions under the early safety car. Both drivers struggled to match the pace of the cars around them in the race, and Russell admitted that the new W15 was definitely underperforming, and moreover, was making no progress over the course of the weekend. We're still really trying to understand this car because we've shown true performance at points over the last 2 weekends, Russell said. FP1, straight out the box, we were top of the timesheets and always in the top 3. In FP2, P2. Then, both weekends, the pace just fell away from us, he complained. This hasn't been our competitors getting faster, it's been us getting slower. We need to understand why that is, but it's fine margins now, he acknowledged. It's so close with ourselves, McLaren, Aston, Ferrari is just a smidge ahead. We just need to tap into a bit more. The Mercedes cars suffered from overheating last weekend in Bahrain, but a bigger problem has been rearing its head in the opening 2 races. Both drivers have reported the car bouncing, although Russell said that there is more to their lack of pace than just that. As for his immediate problems on Saturday, Russell said that, "I spent nearly 40 laps within 1.5 seconds of Fernando Alonso, but couldn't get past. I couldn't get close enough in the high speed to give him any real pressure." Mercedes' problems in those high-speed corners in Saudi Arabia were appallingly bad when you start to look at the data. Just on the TV coverage, after the safety car had finished early in the race, you could see Lando Norris pulling well over a second ahead of Lewis Hamilton in the high-speed section from turns 3 to 12. In that fast section of the track, the W15 was a full 12 km an hour slower than Red Bull's RB20 on average. Worse still, bottom of the table Alpine was slightly quicker in those areas, as were Williams. Remember, that's an Alpine car with a big engine deficit to the rest of the field as well. Mercedes could only outpace Haas from turns 4 to 10 as they hemorrhaged time relative to Norris. The W15 in the fast sections of Jeddah was a low midfield car at best, losing on average 10 km an hour to Ferrari, McLaren and Aston Martin, and even 12 km an hour to Red Bull. The result was a lap time from turn 4 to turn 10 that was 3/10 worse than Leclerc's Ferrari and 4/10 worse than Verstappen's Red Bull in qualifying, while in the race, it actually widened to 1 second while Hamilton followed Lando Norris with the same compound of tyres. Losing a whole second to Lando Norris just through those 6 turns meant that by the time the McLaren and Mercedes got to the first DRS detection zone of the track, just after turn 17, Hamilton was well over a second behind and unable to use the overtaking aid to make a pass. Hamilton's summary of Mercedes' race pace really highlighted just how bad the deficit was. "The car is relatively good in the low speed and not so bad in the medium," he told Sky after the race. "But in the high speed, we are miles off. It was like I was in a different category when I was going through the high speed between the other people, the other guys around me. Mercedes went into the new season hoping to rebound from 2 disappointing years using an extensively revised car. But Hamilton said some of the problems he's experiencing feel familiar, and he isn't convinced the team has gone far enough with its latest design. It's frustrating for sure. To be 3 years in a row in almost the same position, it's definitely tough. There will be tracks this season where Mercedes' lack of high-speed performance really won't matter that much, and they'll be able to fight for higher places. Having a car that is more suited to some tracks than others is very common in Formula 1, and the current era of Red Bull cars is simply a shocking exception to that rule. What is frustrating for Hamilton and worrying for Mercedes is that the problems they try to solve by completely overhauling their car are still there, and this indicates a much deeper problem within the team. The Mercedes boss Toto Wolff fears that the deficit suffered by his team's W15 car last weekend in Saudi Arabia is rooted in a fundamental issue hiding under the Silver Arrow's skin. Mercedes had attempted to mitigate the issue of bouncing and rear instability by switching to a higher downforce rear wing after Thursday's opening day of running in Saudi Arabia, but improvements were hard to come by. I think there is a bigger factor with a lack of high speed than just the rear wing, Wolff explained. "We are missing downforce beyond the steps that you would have a bigger rear wing. We tried that with Lewis, and there's something that we don't understand because we're quick everywhere else pretty much, and we know that we have a smaller rear wing. We're compensating for what we're losing through the corners, but it's just the high speed where we're losing all the lap time." Wolff doubted the W15's negative trait can be solved in the short term by working on the car's setup. "I think that's a biggie. There's only so much you can tune here," he said. "It's more a fundamental thing that we believe the speed should be there, we measure the downforce, but we don't find it on the lap time. There is still this behavior of the car in a certain speed range that our sensors and simulations say this is where we should have the downforce, and we're not having it." This is the problem that plagued Mercedes in 2022 and 2023. Their simulations would tell them one thing, and then when they got to the track, something else entirely was happening. This is the exact same problem they're dealing with this year as well. There is something at the absolute base level, in the bones of how the new ground effect regulations work, that Mercedes are just completely missing. Because of that, they haven't got their simulation programs tuned to match up to the real world, and everything they do in the factory has to come with an asterisk next to it as a warning that it might not perform as expected. With brand new regulations coming in 2026, Mercedes only have till the end of the year to work out what it is they're missing. Because once the bells start to ring in the new year and the teams are allowed to work on 2026's cars, any issues with the Merc cars are not going to get solved. Considering the timing of Hamilton's announcement that he would be moving to Ferrari, many people are starting to consider that he might have known this was coming. During Sky Sports coverage over the weekend, Karen Chan-Hock was asked if he thought Hamilton's decision to join Ferrari stemmed from murmurings that Mercedes would struggle. I think he did know. What they put out there, the message of positivity, are one thing, but I think he knew it was gonna be a tough year. With Toto Wolff himself admitting that their current problems can't be solved by simple setup tweaks and upgrades, the outlook for the team for 2024 is pretty bleak, and Hamilton will be glad to see the back of Mercedes by the time he heads to Ferrari this winter. What are your thoughts about Mercedes' Saudi Arabian Grand Prix? Do you think the team is going to be stuck in the midfield for years to come? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and until next time, drive safe and bye for now.